All right, all you listeners of the madness and anyone lucky enough to catch this show on their AM/FM dials, welcome to another unpredictable, unplanned, unseasoned, and now, underneath the robin's nest in my front yard of madness edition of Under the Radar. I am your host from the East Coast, DJ Smokey, and seeing the fact that we're bringing springtime madness for the first time for this show of madness, we might as well waste no time and explain to you guys what we got prepared for another spring madness edition of Under the Radar. Because we kick things off with another newspaper clipping edition of yesterday's news, with little flowers on them to represent the springtime. Nice. Next up on the plate, we go ahead and check out some screenshots and whatnots from the Twitterverse from this past weekend and beyond for another edition of the Four Squared Delight. And speaking of the beyond, folks, we adjust the size on our Rod Sterling suits and get prepared to open up that fifth dimension door that is apparently covered in flowers and birds for this week to take a trip to the Indy Zone. And yes, Carla the Maestro, I don't get it either with the hummingbirds next to the door either. And speaking of birds, folks, and to keep with the flying theme, we find out which one of you crazy stunners is gonna fly like a bird and most likely be incapacitated until the next spring for another edition of the Wild World of Stunts. And apparently, according to Carla the Maestro, they're gonna fly like a bird and end up breaking their wing. Don't you mean their arm? Oh, they call it a wing too when you get put in a cast. Right. Then finally, last but not least, and hopefully before those infomercials flicker on and off your television sets, we wrap up the show yet another edition of the GTA Online Top 5 Tracks of the Week. And I guess with that said, I might as well tell Carla to make sure to kick up the beats, crank out the tunes, and for any of you listening at home, ease back those recliners, cause it's time for us to get ready to fly low as we go under the radar. Let's get this madness started, folks. Right, all you listeners of the madness, welcome back to Under the Radar. Now, Carl and the Maestro over in the corner said we were just 3 days shy of being the first show of the spring solstice. But that would have mean that we would have had to have Under the Radar prior to Music Village, and according to Carl and the Maestro, hyping somebody up with some madness and then trying to bring them down with Music Village with a special announcement afterwards would have been insane, and most likely would have raised our heart rate up to points that would send us to a hospital. So yeah, we decided to avoid that, mostly because of the concern of Carl and the Maestro over in the corner. All right, I see what you mean. But besides the concern of Carl and the Maestro over my heart rate due to madness overload, I think it's time for us to go into a very special spring-starting edition of yesterday's news. And in our first yesterday's news story, an And in sad news from the world of boxing, former Olympic gold medalist and former world heavyweight champion George Foreman unfortunately died this past week at the age of 79 years old. And according to Carl and the Maestro, 76. Oh yeah, I forgot, he's 76 years old. And the amazing thing about this boxer, and something that I got a feeling a lot of boxers since would try to emulate, would be the fact that after he would retire back in the 80s, he would come back in the ring and become a world champion once again in 1994, beating Michael Moorer to win his second world championship. But his accomplishments doesn't end there, folks, because this man would be able to not only fight in the 1960s against Chuck Wepner, even fight against Dwight Muhammad Kwai in the 80s, and would even be able to fight against Evander Holyfield in the 90s. But most importantly, would end up winning his first world championship against none other than Smokin' Joe Frazier back in the 80s. So yeah, this guy is definitely timeless no matter what anybody tells you, and not to mention was the last of the golden era of boxing. And not to mention a guy who would come up with a Foreman grill that would stand the test of time too. And before I forget, was also featured during King of the Hill for one episode along with his daughter, and was even featured technically during an episode of Futurama as well too, if you want to tie in TV into his career. And we here at Under the Radar would like to say on behalf of possibly one of the greatest boxers of his time, may your work live on forever, and may you forever rest in peace. In other yesterday's news, and more or less inspiring news from the world of wrestling, because not only this past weekend would see the Mecca tribute for Chris Bay in Las Vegas, but would also see Chris Bay getting interviewed by none other than Chris Van Vliet about not only his getting paralyzed in the ring, what he's planning on doing next, and if he's ever gonna get back in the ring again. And yeah, he would say never to that, and I hope to see him back in the ring again, tag teaming alongside with his partner Ace Austin to go for the tag team championships once again in the near future. Hopefully before next Bound for Glory. You know, fingers crossed. And if you guys want to go ahead and check out the interview with the ultimate finesser himself and living inspiration of what to do when things go not your way, then you can go ahead and head on over to the YouTube page of one man only known as Chris Van Vliet to check it out for yourselves. And in other yesterday's news and more or less musical what if news, for you fans out there who ever wondered what Cowboys from Hell by Pantera would sound like if it was written by Green Day, well, Matt Glocky this week will answer that question for you at home, because he would do a what if scenario if Green Day wrote Cowboys from Hell by Pantera. Now, at the same time, as cool as this song sounds, now I'm wondering what would Pantera, if a what if scenario with Pantera singing American Idiot would sound like in the other shoe. And according to Carl and the Maestro, probably with a lot of guitars and heavy metal headbanging. I like that. Hopefully it happens. And if you guys want to go ahead and check out the cool, and I do mean cool, cover of Green Day in a what-if scenario from the world of Pantera, then you can go ahead and head on over to the YouTube page of one man only known as Matt Glocky to check it out for yourselves. And as a little bit of a heads up, the Fantasy Covers Volume 4 will be available as of this week. So for those who wants to check out all the what-if scenarios that he came up with for this Volume 4, go on over to his website to check it out. And in other yesterday's news and in more what-if musical scenario news, Because for you fans out there who always wondered what would it sound like if David Bowie did the classic Rage Against the Machine song of Killing in the Name of, well, I'll tell you this much, it sounds sort of like when he did the song Fame, but in the form of Killing in the Name of. And the reason why we could say that is because Anthony Vincent would hop onto the microphone, guitars, or whatever instrument he would be able to grab to bring that to life in the coolest ways known possible. Now, at the same time, I'm starting to wonder, what would it be like if Rage Against the Machine did a cover of David Bowie's Golden Years? Wonder how that would sound. And apparently, according to Carl of the Maestro, a lot of headbanging there. A lot of headbanging. But besides that answer from Carl of the Maestro, folks, if you guys want to go ahead and check out this cool cover of a classic Rage Against the Machine song against a legend in music, then you can go ahead and check it out on the YouTube page of one man only known as 10 Second Songs to check it out for yourselves. And in other yesterday's news, and more or less news from the world of spirits, ghosts, and ghouls. Because this week we would see none other than Grayson Waller joining Shotzi and Scarlet, and as well as the Herald of Doomsday himself, Killer Cross, all to go to one of the most haunted castles in the world, or in America, known as the Franklin Castle in Cleveland, Ohio. But the best part about this is, folks, and I will say this, for this said ghost hunt, outside of the fact that they caught photographic proof of a ghost, but the fact that we would see Killer Cross greeting Grayson Waller in the form of in the form of Kano from Mortal Kombat, the live-action film, by saying, "Hello, baby, how you..." I can't do it without laughing. Let's just say it was spot on and magical. And if you guys want to go ahead and check out the awesome impersonations of Killer Cross, plus the creepy things that did happen inside of this giant oversized house, then you can go ahead and check it out on the YouTube page of two girls only known as Scarlet and Shotzi to check it out for yourselves. And in other yesterday's news, and more or less aerial assassin news, for you fans out there who always wanted to see killer, or more or less a killer or an assassin of the aerial variety, join up with the man that made him inspired by such games, then you can go ahead and just pinch yourself with this one, because Will Ospreay would join up with none other than Roger Craig Smith to play the latest Assassin's Creed game of Assassin's Creed Shadows. And not only we get a chance to pet a dog, take the head off of a traitor, and as well as jump into a bale of hay amongst other cool things from that said world. Now, the fact that this man would be able to introduce Will Ospreay to the ring prior to his match at All In, I got a feeling it was a dream come true to play games alongside with him in this once-in-a-lifetime moment that we would see here. And not to mention seeing how much fun he had playing the game too. It's pretty cool, really is. And if you guys want to go ahead and check out the aerial assassin teaming up with an assassin to play some cool games, then you can go ahead and head on over towards the Twitter page of one man only known as Will Ospreay to check it out for yourselves. And Carl and the Maestro said bruv at the end of that, and okay. And in other yesterday's news, and apparently we've been busy with these giant oversized scissors, because to circle back to the Herald of Doomsday, Killer Cross, and for people who ever wondered if he was ever going to come back to Bloodsport, well, it looks like he's going to be making his way back to Bloodsport prior to the grandest stage of them all, of WrestleMania. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, for Bloodsport 13, Killer Cross makes his return back to that place. And the fact that it's in Vegas where he cut his teeth, and the fact that these past couple of months or weeks, we've been seeing Cross heading back to the world of Vegas, not only for FSW, for Bloodsport, I'm really hoping he gets a shot at something for WrestleMania for this year. Even though he was in that 6-man match that took place at WrestleMania this past year, yeah, I got a feeling he's gonna bring something very dangerous to the table if he's gonna be able to make his way to the grand stage of WrestleMania. Mark my words. And if you guys want to go ahead and check out all the details of what Cross may or may not do for the said event that will take place in Vegas, then you can go ahead and check it out on the said Twitter page of one man only known as Josh L. Barnett to check it out for yourselves. And I guess with that said, folks, wraps it up for a very special jam-packed springtime edition of yesterday's news. And I guess with that said, I think it's time for us to head back to that music once again. And when we return, we'll be back with more madness that you can shake a stick at as Under the Radar rolls on right after this. So don't get lost in that madness just yet, folks, and stay tuned. And we're back with the show of madness that's bringing spring madness to your 3-day in spring, only known as Under the Radar. And during the break, I asked Carla the Maestro what sort of spring plans they've got coming down the tubes. And they would tell me, no, we got nothing. The only thing we're doing is bringing music to the fans. You mean the listeners of the madness, right? And they said, yeah. And currently, right now, they're digging through a whole case of CDs as we speak. So, yeah, they're currently hard at work in their own form of spring cleaning. You know what I mean? And speaking of spring cleaning, folks, I think it's time for us to head on over to the Twitterverse to try to find some cool screenshots and whatnots from the Twitterverse from this past week and beyond for a very special spring cleaning edition of the 4 Squared Delight. And the first screenshot that we have up comes from none other than the Twitter page of Next Indy by way of the developers Grim Tales LLC with their said screenshot from the video game of Conductor Cat. And the screenshot that they provided for this week shows our feline friend here actually building train tracks to try to get back to where he lives, only for him to miscalculate the location of the tracks and for the train to unfortunately fall off the tracks, and for him to get help from a mole to try to get him back on track, but for him to go through a caution stone-like door before the cameras can fade to black. Now, I don't know why, but this reminds me of an American Tale, Five Goes West, with a little hint of Banjo-Kazooie in there as well, too. Now, here's hoping in the near future for this feline-like game that not only do you get a chance to actually build your own train, but maybe, just maybe, a chance for you to have a friend join alongside you with you on the journey. And Carla the Maestro said it's a single-player game, so what friend you're talking about? Maybe the mole. You know, the mole knows the area very well, so maybe he can join you alongside on this magical train journey. Even though his eyesight's not that good, he can probably help you through the tunnels. Or build one for you. Who knows? But besides having a mold that I would call Morocco if it helped me on that journey, the next screenshot that we have up, literally and figuratively, comes from none other than Fadrul 97 with their said screenshot from the video game of Acts of Blood. And he would say, prior to the screenshot, 28 seconds of pure brutality ASMR from my game. And boy, he would live up to that, because during the said screenshot, not only it would show somebody taking people out with not only plenty of kicks, but even a tiger knee directly to the face into some form of railing, but would also see him pulling off a spinning back fist to avoid a Superman punch, hitting somebody in the knees with a baseball bat, throwing said baseball bat in somebody else's face, and even using capoeira style to take it to one of the bad guys. Nice! Nice! And that's just some of the things that happened during the said screenshot, because you would also see him using guns to take somebody out with by not only shooting them, but throwing the gun at the said person after the clip was empty. Nice! Now, this screenshot automatically reminds me of, yep, Sleeping Dogs. Definitely reminds me of Sleeping Dogs, and here's hoping in the near future for this set game that you can have the same environmental takedowns that you did in that game in this one. And yes, Call of the Maestro, that includes the said swordfish takedown that was featured in that game, where you threw somebody on a whole bunch of heads of swordfish to spike them toward it. Yeah, I got a feeling it would work in this game. It really would. But besides turning a video game into something out of Mortal Kombat, according to Call of the Maestro, the next screenshot that we have up comes from the said Twitter page of Almenara Games with their said screenshot from the video game of Rogue Mansion. And during this said screenshot, and literally and figuratively, but this time with a camera, would show our heroine as she would get trapped by two, I do believe, zombies of some type, only for her to take a picture of both of them, for them to freeze frame in the picture, and for her to walk by while saying, "Say cheese," and just leave. Incredible! Incredible! Now, this automatically reminds me of Fatal Frame. Definitely reminds me of Fatal Frame, and here's hoping in the near future for this said screenshot that you have plenty of film in that camera to prevent you from getting hurt from these said spirits, because I got a feeling you're gonna be running into them a lot in this mansion if it's anything like Resident Evil. And according to Call of the Maestro, you just better hope there's no spiders in there. Yeah, don't remind me. But besides my arachnophobia kicking up once again, folks, the next screenshot that we have up comes from the Twitter page of Mouse the Game with their said screenshot from the video game of, well, Mouse. And the screenshot that they provided for this week shows our Mouseketeer-like friend using a water pipe to make their way through a pipe to not only take on one of the bad guys by taking his head off with a Tommy gun, but going through the said water pipe once again to grab an elixir to take out another. Not bad. Not bad at all. Now, this reminds me of a cartoon-esque version of the video game of 13. Yeah, definitely reminds me of that. And here's hoping in the near future for this set game that, well, you get a chance to use the classic black hole pit type object that was featured in Who Framed Roger Rabbit to make your way to different worlds, and even be able to drop an anvil on the head of your enemies if you place it in the right spot. And Call of the Maestro would ask me, do you know what spot to place it in for it to work? Not really. I'm not a cartoonist. I'm not good at that. And he said, well, how many cartoons you watched over the years? 20. But I'm not good at taking out people with a giant oversized form of anvil or pie or anything like that. Come on. I didn't study Looney Tunes that well. But besides Carl and the Maestro calling me out on my cartoon knowledge, the last but not least screenshot that we have up for this week comes from the Twitter page of Next Indy from the developers, and drumroll please folks, Zach Northrop, with their said screenshot from the video game of Worming from Home. And the screenshot that they provided for this week shows our worm-like friend not only using a mouse, but also planting himself in a pot of dirt, as well as trying to use a keyboard to go to work in some way, shape, or form. Right. And this screenshot automatically reminds me of a what-if scenario if Goat Simulator was a worm instead of a goat. And Carl and the Maestro said this worm can even drink coffee too. Can he put on a tie? According to Carl and the Maestro, why yes. If he tries hard enough with no hands, yes he can. Alright, well here's hoping in the near future for this set game that not only you get a chance to get some form of raise or promotion as this worm-like worker from home, but also maybe, just maybe, a chance to upgrade the said table and desk. Because I got a feeling that keyboard is about to go out at any time, so a chance to upgrade it will be pretty cool to see. Or, experience for this worm, because I'm trying to wonder, how in the world is he going to be able to order the new keyboard? And apparently, according to Carl and the Maestro, with his hands? Worms don't have hands. This is not one of those scholastic books. Well, while we try to figure out how in the world that worm's going to be able to order some form of book or any form of thing off an online site to upgrade his workspace, if you guys and gals out there want to go ahead and check out any other cool indie screenshots and whatnots from the Twitterverse from this past weekend and beyond for yourselves, then you can go ahead and head on over to the Twitter pages of not only Oliver Snyder's, Octo Curio, Nomad, Playing Indies, Indie Rhymes, Shot_Games, Alpha Beta Gamer, Next Indy, or even under the hashtag of Screenshot Saturday. But if you guys want to go ahead and check out the screenshots that we liked for this week and get a further interpretation of it for yourselves, then you can head on over to our Twitter page, only known as the WH in 0012, and look up the screenshot page called Screenshot Spring Saturday. Well, it was spring on Saturday, so I'll let you have it. And I guess with that said, folks, I think it's time for us to head back to that music once again. And when we return, we take another trip directly to the Indie Zone as Under the Radar rolls on right after this. So don't go anywhere just yet, folks, and stay tuned. All right, all you listeners of the madness and any game lovers alike out there, welcome back to Under the Radar. And this week's screenshots of the week goes to none other than Grim Tales with their said screenshot from the video game of Conductor Cat, and also goes to none other than Mouse the Game with their said screenshot from the video game of Mouse. Now, the reason why in the world these two screenshots made it in for the screenshot of the week for this week, well, for the first one, anybody who is able to ride a train as a cat wearing cool goggles named Griffin is definitely a winner in my book. And hoping in the near future they have some cool gadgets to go with the cool name and cool overcoat. And the reason why in the world the second screenshot made it in for the screenshot for the week for this week, well, anytime you can use cartoon antics to take out your enemies with a Tommy gun follow-up is definitely a winner in my book, and something that is truly out of this world. And speaking of things that are out of this world for this part of the show, folks, I think it's time for us to open up the door to the fifth dimension of games while adjusting the tie on our Rod Sterling suits to make a springtime trip directly to the Indie Zone. Carl and the Maestro, right next to that robin nest, right next to that tree outside of Music Village headquarters. There's some cool indie games coming in. Let's go grab them. And the first game that we have up comes from the developers Glowfish Interactive with their set game of Trifox. Cool name for the game. And this game currently available for the low price of $19.99. Not bad. Next game we have up after that comes from the developers Bureau Braven. Nice developer name, by the way, with their set game of Master Plan Tycoon. And this game currently available for the low price of $9.99, but for those out there who wants the complete pack, and I got a feeling you do, it's currently available for the low price of $134. Yikes. And the next game that we have up comes from none other than Hiccup Interactive. Nice developer name, by the way, with their set game of Urchins and Ink. And this game currently available for the low price of $7.99. Next game after that comes from none other than Hardcore Dev with their set game of The Symbiont. And this game currently available for the low price of $19.99. But for those out there who wants the Symbiont Reunion Bundle, you can get it for as low as $34.71. Next game after that comes from the developers Hellride Games with their set game of Capital Command. Nice name for the game. And this game will be coming soon to a Steam machine near you, but for those out there who wants to add it to your wish list, go ahead. You can currently do it right now. Next game we have up after that comes from the developers Improx Games with their set game of The Last Cube. And this game currently available for the low price of $19.99, but for those who wants to try it before you buy it, you can. There's a demo for it right now. Next game after that comes from the developers Xenobits with their set game of Exogate Initiative. And this game currently available for the low price of $16.24. But for those who want the Initiative Supporter Bundle, you can get it for as low as $20.17. Next game we have up after that comes from none other than the publisher OK Joy with their set game of Calvary Girls. And this game currently available for the low price of $9.99, but for those who wants to try it before you buy it, there's currently a demo for it as well too. And Carl and the Maestro tugging me on the shoulder asking me, why didn't we mention the developer's name? Because it's in Japanese, and we can't read Japanese. I don't know if you knew that or not, but we can't. But besides a name that we'll look up later and thank by the end of the show, we would like to go into the next game, which comes from none other than Studio Primitive with their set game of Attack of the Karens. Awesome name for the game too, and this game currently available for the low price of $4.99. But for those out there who wants to try it before you buy it, you can. Currently a demo out for it right now as we speak. And the next game that we have up comes from the developers Happy Juice Games with their set game of Lost in Play. And this game currently available for the low price of $19.99. But for those who wants to get the Lost in Mystery Bundle, you can get that for as low as $24.28. Next game we have up after that, folks, comes from none other than QCF Design with their set game of Desktop Dungeons Rewind. And And this game currently available for low price of $19.99. But for those who want the Desktop Dungeons Anniversary Bundle, you can get it for as low as $27.98. Not bad. Next game we have up after that comes from the developers Pixel Knot Games with their said game of Rocket Rumble. And this game currently available for the low price of $24.99. But for those who wants to try out the Rocket Rumble demo, yeah, they got one. You can try it right now as we speak. And the next game we have up after that comes from none other than the developers Hot Sauce Bread Studios. Awesome developer name, by the way, with their set game of Haste Real-Time Card Combat. And this game will be coming soon to a Steam machine near you, so make sure you head on over and add it to your wish list today. I don't know why I'm giving the thumbs up for it, but yeah, hopefully that gives you the initiative to head over there for the game. Anywho, the next game we have up comes from the developers Prime Games with their said game of Fabled Lands. And this game currently available for the low price of $18.99. But for those out there who wants to get the demo, there's currently one that you can get and try before you buy the game. Next game we have up after that comes from none other than Hangry Owl Games with their said game of Rose. No call into my show, that's the actual name of the game. And this game currently available for the low price of $12.99. But for those who wants to download this gross demo, you can. And try it before you buy it. And the next game that we have up comes from the developers Dragon Empress and Great Conspiracy Theory. Nice developer names, by the way, with their said game of Last One Behind the Choice. And this game currently available for the low price of $4.99, and you can currently get a demo for it as well too, so you can try it before you buy it. And the last but certainly not least game we have up to kick off this spring solstice comes from the developers Axonoithy with their said game of Roboholic. And this game will be coming soon to a Steam machine near you. And for those out there who wants to join the playtest, well, you currently can. So make sure you go ahead over there to request access to play that game, or at least the playtest for it. And if you guys want to go ahead and check out any other cool games that comes from a world beyond our very dimension, then you can go ahead and head on over to the store.steampower page of one man only known as store.steampower.com and head over to the DreamHack Beyond Indie Showcase page to check out a whole bunch of games that are just out of this world. And I guess with that said, I think it's time for us to head back to that music once again. And when we return, we'll be back with another back-breaking, spine-tingling edition of the Wild World of Stunts as Under the Radar rolls on right after this. So don't get lost in the madness just yet, folks, and stay tuned. Right, all you risk takers and backbreakers out there, welcome back to Under the Radar. And now it's time for us to find out which one of you crazy stunners is gonna leap out of hibernation directly into a hospital bed in the worst ways known possible for a very special springtime edition of the Wild World of Stunts. And the first stunt that we have up, and speaking of leaping into things, comes from none other than Glimeball with their said stunt of GTA 5 flipping the Vapid Bullet. And according to Caller the Maestro, he must have flipped this one vapidly, because it took him less than 10 seconds. Because during this said stunt, we would see our vapid friend going up into the skies and pulling off a nice slow motion gyroscope into a reverse landing directly into a parking lot while wearing a monkey mask. Like what, Carla the Maestro? Like it, love. Now, Carla the Maestro, as well as the PR department, is giving this stunt a 10. And at the same time, is wondering, how in the world was he able to land backwards with no problems? Skills. That's the easy answer. Skills. The hard answer, I got a feeling not even gravity can solve. And speaking of people who defies the laws of physics and gravity whenever they get in a plane, the next stunt we have up comes from the femme fatales of the sky themselves, Vinewood on Fire, with their said stunt of Race Duster 300 H2. Now, during this aviation experiment that we would see from Vinewood on Fire, we'd see them first landing on the top of the scissor lift in the Grand Sonora Desert on top of Mount Chiliad, only for a girl named Amy to shoot the said helicopter or said plane Duster right directly in position for them to fly off the said giant oversized scissor lift and pull a full Wright brothers by flying without any form of takeoff help directly all the way back around, back up to the top of the said building to realize, oh crap, somebody else is parked there. Boom! For an explosion to take place that would take Amy off her feet and for the two pilots to jump out in enough time, but for Vinewood on Fire and her crazy antics to do a full Jeff Hardy swanton bomb directly into the flames of the wreckage. Why? Why? And even the doctor over in the corner asks the same question, and Doc, you gotta let us know, man. Is she all right? Apparently, according to the doctor, 3rd-degree burns, but other than that, she should be fine. Wait, you said 3rd-degree burns, but where are the 3rd-degree burns? And she would show me, the doctor and the nurse over in the corner would show me the pictures of her back covered in 3rd-degree burns. So, yeah, looks like she's gonna have to get a skin graft and go back to that tattoo artist to get that tattoo replaced. Ugh. But besides looking at a scar on someone's back that looks like a melted Emilio's pizza, the next stunt that we have up comes from none other than Biff Kellogg with their said stunt of Heli Jump. Now, before this stunt, he would tell everybody at home, since he submitted this tape, can I get a heli yeah? And I was gonna say somebody must have said it, because he said roll it afterwards to show him making his way in the said kaiju-like bike that he would be able to ride, that he would call a kaiju, directly to the Los Santos International Airport to get ready for takeoff, and would fly directly above the outskirts of the LSIA airport, and then would immediately decide to jump out of the plane going full dive. Now, when he said full dive, I got a feeling he spent more time saying that than he did to deploy the chute, because I got a feeling he forgot to deploy the chute. And why do we say that? Because in mid-high dive, while having his hands stretched out like if he was gonna do an Uso splash, he would make a splash, all right, directly into the ocean face first. Ooh. But luckily for him, he was wearing a mouthpiece, but not luckily for him, he did not have a co-pilot at the time to help him out, Because for those who are wondering at home, he dove about, well, that looks like about 60 stories up from out of that plane directly into the water. Yeah, and apparently, according to the doctors at home, he broke every bone in his face. He broke all of his teeth. He broke his wrist. He broke his shoulder. And apparently, he broke his hip as well upon impact. Ooh. But how in the world did they get him? Apparently the lifeguards were on duty at the time and was able to scoop him up out of the ocean using a giant net and took him over to the local hospital in Los Santos. Well, luckily for him, but not lucky that he didn't plan that a little bit better. You know what I mean? And the next stunt that we have up to keep this aviation theme alive comes from none other than the femme fatales of the sky themselves. Mine went on fire with their said stunt. I'm ready for Top Gun 3. And to prove how ready they are for said Top Gun 3, they would take a ride you through a plane course and would try to make their way through this said circular motion. And Colin the Maestro said, this tubular-like race, I wouldn't look at it face on because you'll get dizzy. Cause Mine went on fire to put her flight skills to the test. Outside of going through the said tube, would decide at one point to pull off a full barrel roll, listening to General Pepper via Star Fox 64, and be able to make her way through certain obstacles and objects inside of this said tunnel, and being one of the only aviation units to make it through this entire course without hitting a single object. But we all knew she was impressive, but this course just proves it. And the PR department, as well as Carl and the Maestro, is giving this stunt a perfect 10. And at the same time is still dizzy after looking at her trying to make her way through this set course. Yeah, I'm a little bit dizzy too, and I gotta stop staring at the screen because I'm starting to get a little bit nauseous here. Oh no, here it goes again. Oh no. But besides getting nauseous from crazy stunts, folks, the last but not least stunt that we have up for this week comes from none other than Alec Penn with their said stunt of worst accidents in GTA 5. Now, the lead into this video made me believe he was Alan Partridge getting ready for a clip montage of people getting hurt, but little did I know he would be the one who'd be the star of the show of hurt. And what do I mean by that, folks? Because Alec Penn would go on the screen and say, "Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here, Alec Penn, showing you the worst injuries you can suffer off the top of Mount Chiliad. Now look over to your right, look over to your left, now look down. Here I go down this mountain. Don't try this at home. Like, subscribe, and get ready for pain." Now, when he said get ready for pain, I should have been ready for whatever was about to happen, but boy, I wasn't. Because this guy decided to go off the mountain with the new and improved Manchez 2.0 to try to glide his way down Mount Chiliad the same way you would see Tom Cruise doing Mission Impossible, but he would prove how impossible that feat would be. Because not only this guy would be able to jump off that said rigid cliff on Mount Chiliad, off that makeshift ramp that said danger, but didn't listen to the word danger. Flew off that mountain and then landed, and I guess the back wheel must have caught a rock or something because he would fly off the bike, and then in Yugoslavia, bike becomes you. Because this guy would land directly on the back of the bike with his back and slam so hard we can hear him going while he slammed onto the back of that bike. So, Doc, we don't need to go to the rest of the clip. How bad is he hurt? And they showed me the pictures of him in the hospital in a full body cast like Inspector Gadget. So, yeah, he's in bad shape. He's in bad shape. And if you continue through the video, folks, not only he hits a tree like George of the Jungle on the way down, but I think the third hit would be something that definitely did put him in the hospital, because he would go rolling like a tumbleweed and get F5'd by one of the trees. Ooh, that's bad. That is real bad. And if you guys and gals out there want to go ahead and check out any other crazy stunts of people getting themselves maimed for unnecessary fame, then you can go ahead and head on over to the socialclub.rockstargames page of one man only known as socialclub.rockstargames.com and check out all of the crazy stunts of people on that video page who's most likely going to go into a full hibernation for the next 6 months due to an early spring out of their bed onto a bike or object to land directly into a hospital bed in the worst ways known possible. And according to Carla the Maestro over the corner, that's mean, man. That's mean what you just said. And they would say that, yeah, apparently during this stunt, they would get knocked out in more ways than one for the March Madness bracket. And a bracket that they would place firmly on their head or legs depending on how severe the injury was. Like I said before, that's me, man. And I guess with that said, folks, I think it's time for us to head back to that music again. And when we return, we'll be back with another edition of the GTA Online Top 5 Tracks of the Week right after this. So don't adjust your sets for the madness just yet, folks, and stay tuned. All right, all you graveyard shift racers out there tonight, welcome back to Under the Radar. And this week's Stunts of the Week goes to none other than Glimeball with their said stunt of GTA 5 flipping the Vapid Bullet. And also goes to none other than the Femme Fatales of the Sky themselves, Vinewood on Fire with their said stunt of Race Duster 300 H2. Now, the reason why in the world these two stunts made it in for the Stunt of the Week for this week, well, for the first one, anybody who is crazy enough to do a gyroscope and land backwards in a parking spot, almost similar to what Jim Carrey was able to do in the classic film of Ace Ventura 2, definitely deserves to be mentioned during this part of the show. And the reason why in the world we picked the second stunt, folks, well, anybody who is crazy enough to willingly swanton bomb off the top of the scissor lift on the top of Mount Chiliad directly into a flaming vehicle definitely deserve to be mentioned during this part of the show with their crazy madness-like stunt. And speaking of madness, folks, I think it's time for us to get ready to rev our engines for the first time for the said spring solstice and find out what tracks is gonna christen it in right for a very special springtime edition of the GTA Online Top 5 Tracks of the Week. And the first track that we have up comes from none other than Patuna de Moresa, or Patua de Morosa. Carl and Michael said you're close with the second one with their said track of PM Oval Cross Random. And the reason why in the world we decided to pick this track for this week, folks, well, not only because it's a very unique, high-angle, oval-like track that you get a chance to race on, but also due to the crazy crossover that would be included for this said track as well. Now, the only tip of advice we have for you race fans out there when it comes to tracks with crazy high walls that you can wall ride off of is to be careful on the height you decide to wall ride off these said tracks. Because if you don't, let's just say there's a high possibility of you flying out of the bowl and flying directly into the loser bracket. Or according to Carl and the Maestro, right directly into a DNF. Hey, that's a better way to describe it. So make sure you watch out on how in the world you wall ride during this set track. And on top of all of that, make sure you pick the right car for the job that can handle this set track. Because we almost forgot to mention that every car across the board, with the exception of those weaponized vehicles you know and love so much, and vans, are not available for this set track. So, yeah, make sure you pick wisely. the next track that we have up comes from the creator Dark Slayer 1212. Nice name, by the way, with their set track of Doom Tunnels V2. And the reason why in the world we decided to pick this Doom Tunnel-like track, well, because this race, unlike the ones we mentioned prior, is a full pipe race that is a point-to-point pipe race. Love to see somebody say that 5 times fast. Carl and my show, and even the PR department said no, so we'll move on. Because, yeah, the only tip of advice we have for you race fans out there for this set track that's filled with a lot of horrifying turns in it is to make sure you pick a car with great handling, and if you decide to bring one of your own to the dance, make sure you be careful during those turns if you decide to go on the top of the walls for this set tube race, because let's just say, any way you look at it with a sharp end turn for a race, it can come back to haunt you, especially in a tube. And for those who don't listen to my instructions to the other racers, watch out for falling cars. You'll get what I mean in due time. And the next track that we have up comes from the creator Tomster84 with their set track of Epic Mount Chiliad Race. And the reason why in the world we decided to pick this race, and I got a feeling the tube theme lives on, is not only because of the high-octane supercars you can race during this set track, but also because of the tubular moments that can happen during it, dude. Now, the only tip of advice we have for you race fans out there for this set track is 1, make sure you know which way is up once you exit the tube. And 2, watch out during that downward spiral part of the track for this race, because if you don't, especially when you get out of a tube, your car might land upside down and you might shoot upside down this race and off the track itself, which will cost you during this set race. So make sure you land right side up when you're inside that tube, because if you don't, it'll cost you. So, good luck. And the next track that we have up comes from the creator Petey Pan Mofo, long time no see, with their set track of RTM F2F Paris. Or should we say Paris? According to Carl and my show, Paris will work just fine. Alright? Now, the only tip of advice we have for you race fans out there, and the reason why in the world we picked it, not only you get a chance to use every car across the board, but also the fact that it has an Eiffel Tower in the center is pretty cool. But at the same time, can be very troublesome if you're trying to race underneath it in full contact with other racers. Now, the only advice I can give you is to avoid contact with other cars as much as possible, even though it's damn near impossible to avoid a car in the said Eiffel Tower that you're going to be racing underneath. So, yeah, let's just say try to avoid them to the best of your abilities, because if you don't, there's a high possibility of you getting launched into the Eiffel Tower itself or fall into the water below, which both of them can cost you during this said race. And also, don't get lapped. Because if you do, yeah, you're definitely screwed if you get lapped during this race. Ugh. And the last but not least track that we have up for this week to kick off your spring solstice comes from the creator Fran the Man 87 with their set track, Hot Ring Zigzag. And the reason why in the world we decided to pick this track, folks, not only because of the litany list of cars you get a chance to race in, with the exception of utility, and Carl and Michael said utilities in it, but not vans. And the weaponized vehicles you know and love so much during this race. The only tip of advice we have for you fans out there for this set track that has no barriers and a whole bunch of cool turns that reminds me of a Mazda commercial is to make sure you pick a car with great handling to handle all those curves. Because if you don't, let's just say there's a high possibility of you slipping off this track and slipping right out of the pole position that will definitely get you a lot of money if you win this race. And probably something we should have mentioned weeks ago, that a lot of these tracks pay out a high amount of money if you're able to win them. And with that being said, folks, if you guys want to go ahead and check out all of these cool tracks that we were able to like for this week and a couple of others we threw into the mix in playlist form, then you can head on over to the socialclub.rockstargames page of one man only known as socialclub.rockstargames.com and check out the playlist entitled Jump Spring to check out all of these cool tracks and more for yourselves. And I guess with that said, folks, wraps it up for a very special Springtastic Madness edition of the GTA Online Top 5 Tracks of the Week. And I guess with that said, I think it's time for us to head back to that music one more time. And when we return, we'll be back with the final segment for Under the Radar for this week, right after this. So don't turn that dial away from the madness just yet, folks, and stay tuned. Well, for you listeners to the madness, seeing the fact that the infomercials are starting to flicker on and off your television sets and we've got to get out of here before that truly happens, we might as well bring control of the television sets back to you, the listeners of the madness at home, as we bring Under the Radar for this week to an emphatic close. But don't worry, if you miss any of the madness we were able to give you for this week, we got you covered. Because you can catch this show again one more time, all the time, on our SoundCloud, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, and Live 365 pages, still all named the same, only known as Music Village Radio under the hashtag Under the Radar 483. And apparently, according to Carl and the Maestro, that's how many sticks and twigs that are in that tree for that robin's nest that's currently outside of Music Village headquarters. You counted them? No, apparently the bird did, and they were told that that's how many sticks they used. You can speak to animals? Well, besides all that, folks, if you guys want to figure out all the crazy and zany things we still got prepared for this month of madness, like Carl and the Maestro's ability to speak to birds, then you can go ahead and check it out on our YouTube, Discord, and Twitter pages, still all named the same, only known as VAA Agent 0012. And before we head out for the night, we would like to thank, as always, you, the listeners of the madness out there, for listening in to a very special springtime madness kickoff edition of Under the Radar. And if you guys and gals out there like what you heard, go out there and spread the word. You know what? Like Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory when he was talking to one of the parents. Yeah, you know, the PR department knows where I'm going with this one, and they're wearing the same top hat Willy Wonka wore. Nice, you got one for me? And they said they did. Cool. And we would also like to thank you, the independent artists out there, for that musical goodness like you always do. And keep up the great work, guys. And here's hoping your music gets featured during one of the sing-along moments during the Willy Wonka series that's going to be heading to Netflix. Because I got a feeling they're going to need a lot of musical interludes. So, yeah, hopefully you can provide it. And why? Because we believe in you guys. That's why. That's why. And speaking of believing in people's musical abilities, we would like to thank our musical guests for this week, none other than Carl and the Maestro, with their said songs of not only heavy static radio interference that was featured during the intro for this week's edition of the show, but of course for the song you're listening to right now, a B-movie metal director's cut that's currently bringing things out for this week's edition of Under the Radar. Like always, Carl and the Maestro, keep up the great work, and we can't wait to hear what you got coming down the tubes next. And finally, last but certainly not least, we would like to thank you, the independent gamers out there, for delivering all those sweet video game hits, clips, tracks, and stunts that we had a chance to deliver for this week's show. And as always, keep those crazy tracks and stunts and games a-coming. And to you crazy stunners out there, and yes, I remembered from last week, here you go, the bird helmet that we were going to give you for the spring. And oh, before you think I really forgot about things, we would also like to thank none other than Neutron Star Game Institute for their game of Cavalry Girls that we were able to mention during the Indy Zone. That was the name that was written in Japanese that we couldn't read, but Carl and the Maestro looked it up. See, I told you, all bases covered around here. And as always, all you indie gamers out there, keep them coming, because you never know what show might be around the corner next. Hint, hint. Hint, hint. And I guess with everybody thanked, you guys out there, we go out. I'm DJ Smokey on behalf of Carl and the Maestro, and for this spring solstice that we're bringing to your homes with a dose of madness, saying, a little nonsense now and then is relished by the wisest men. But most importantly, when there's smoke, there's fire. And always remember, don't you ever forget, no matter what time of the day the show may air, during whatever sort of season it happens to hit, whether it be summer, autumn, fall, spring, or even the rare holiday of winter that may have been featured during a classic show during a Disney network that kids invented during a summer vacation like no other, while wearing a Willy Wonka hat and bringing madness into your homes just like Willy Wonka will bring to a chocolate factory probably built near you thanks to Netflix. And with madness that we still need to deliver for another 6 more weeks for a summer or a springtime madness that will probably carry you over into the summer with style to keep flying low and stay under the radar. Have a happy spring and good night, everybody.